Hey there YouTube, this is SJM4306 and this is another exciting episode of TeardownTube, and you can see my newest teardown right here. This is a iGo, it's a 480p, wow, blinding, 480p Pico Projector and has nice light up buttons. This is the exact same circuit board as the internals as the PK201 Optima branded. Apparently they rebranded this. Several companies did, but it's the same internals amongst all of them. Just the boot software is slightly different. The firmware on it is customized for each manufacturer. But yeah, you can see it has a DLP chip. It's 480p resolution, so it was a 854 by 480. Manual focus adjustment, universal I/O, so it'll accept composite, S-video, HDMI, VGA, pretty much everything, component even, via this stupid little connector that no one has any. You just can't buy them online, and when you do find them, they're like $60 for a piece of wire. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I ran aside. At least it does have mini HDMI input. And I bought one of these full-size to mini, so I can use pretty much anything. I can use my Vita TV and play some video games. I can hook it up to my Android box and watch videos, and it's perfect. Only thing is battery power kind of stinks. It has a built-in lithium battery there, but battery life's only about an hour and a half, depending on whether it's on eco mode or not. I believe it's 25 lumens brightness. It drops down to somewhere like 18 or 16, something like that, if you use the eco mode, as I said, but you do get longer battery life, not by much though. But I definitely would advise you picking up one of these USB to DC input adapters, and if you can score, I got this guy for $5 from a local store called Five Below. It's a dual phone battery charger case. It's has two 25, or was it 2200 milliamp hour cells inside, and this guy, I can run this for like 4 or 5 hours easily off of a fully charged battery pack, and it's perfect. I have it set up on my wall to watch movies and play video games on, and I've been using it for hours and hours and hours, and it's absolutely great. Just has a simple tripod mount, so I can aim it at the wall, adjust it, square it up, DC input, so I don't have to worry about battery power, and just fire her up with the HDMI input. Looks great. I mean, obviously it's not HD, but yeah, not bad. I got this used in a lot. I think they showed a picture of it working, but they said that they didn't test all the functions, so I got it for quite a bit cheaper than they normally go for. Yeah, here's the battery. It is, where does it say, 3.7 volt, 1410, so about a little over 1400 milliamp hour capacity, which is pretty decent for the size. But yeah, let's pop this guy open. And so there are 6 screws, pretty much, standard locations. It does have a micro SD card input, of which I do have a card. So this guy is not in focus. Thank you. So I'm not sure the exact size that it'll take up to, probably up to like 16 gigs at least. It does play media files internally for you. It has a built-in media player for video. It's pretty picky though in terms of like the encoding. So, I mean, it's just easier using HDMI input and like using your phone or something like that if you have MHL. So anyway, let's get these 6 screws out. Yeah, so I believe I'm up to, this is my 99th video, and my next video will be the 100th. So finally getting up there. I'm excited about that. I mean, it feels like just yesterday where I actually started making videos. Yeah. Okay, I don't want to lose all the screws. Okay, only lost one. Okay. 2 more. Come on. Yep. So here we go. So now it is mostly open. There's a lot of ribbon connectors. I can see one in here, and it's not populated. So maybe for debugging, so they might have loaded the firmware on via that. But let's pop the shell open. So you can get your fingernail in there. Don't pull it off all the way. There's a ribbon connector. You can disconnect it in the back there. There's a flat flex, and it comes right out. And you'll notice right away there's no fan in this device. It will get pretty toasty under full brightness because all it has is this internal, basically the entire shell is like metallized. It has, you know, copper on it, so that'll suck up the heat, but there's no real venting. So definitely you want to maybe put a small fan on it or something if you're going to run it full brightness. At eco mode, it's just fine. Doesn't get toasty at all. There are thermal sill pads on here to facilitate heat transfer. And here's the actual board itself with the backlit buttons and the buttons and whatnot. Yeah, feels pretty hefty actually. I like the build quality of this. So anyway, we have, interestingly enough, under the IR window in the back, there's a push button. And I found out that that's a reset button. And it's weird because once this IR window's on, you can't push it externally with the case closed. So maybe it's something for their internal testing for doing repairs and stuff. Anyway, so you can see here, this is a guy right here. So there's a DLP chip in here. This is for driving the DLP, obviously. Some sort of, from what I can see, Alphaida, which is a memory manufacturer, so some sort of support memory, maybe for frame buffering, something like that. You have your speaker right here, as well as a Cirrus Logic. This will be the audio amplifier for that. And then you have a main chip right in here, which is upside down. It's an AM7213D. That's probably going to be your main system on chip, so that'll do all the menus, the decoding options, that kind of stuff for the media playback, as well as a flash chip. This does have, I believe, like 32 or 64 megabytes of memory built in if you don't have an SD card slotted in there. Which is like barely enough for, you know, if you want to do a small presentation or something like that, just show a couple pictures. Anyway, so let's disconnect the lens assembly. And so this guy right here, this ribbon is the RGB LED. So because this is DLP and it's a single chip DLP, it requires sequential flashing of red, green, and blue light in order to make up the entire image. Interestingly enough, DLP, like on larger projectors, if you were to take out the color wheel, all you would see is a black and white image because that's really all DLP can. It's monochrome on single chip DLP. And so obviously they're not going to be able to fit 3 DLP chips in something this small, so they have to do it this way. Which means if your eyes are particularly sensitive, or if you look at the corner of your eye, you can see rainbow effects in the image. The update rate on this must be pretty good because I'm really sensitive to rainbow images on DLP projectors, and I rarely see that when I'm looking straight at the screen. Only if I catch it out of the corner of my eye can I actually see that rainbow effect. So this is pretty good, I would say. So we can pull this guy out here, and this is actually pretty stiff, the cable, which means it's made for obviously carrying quite a bit of power because it's for the actual illumination. There's a press fit connector in here for the actual DLP chip, and that should be all. So I should be able to remove this one screw here holding the main board down, and 2 screws holding the speaker down. So I don't actually use the speaker often. There's an audio output 3.5 mil, and I have it hooked up to an external speaker with amplification, and that sounds immensely better than the built-in audio. So I would suggest doing that if you were actually going to use this to watch videos. Let's see. There we go. That's why I always put a magnet on the end of my screwdriver so I don't have to mess around with this. I might have to cut off the video soon because my memory on my phone is quite a bit lacking, so I'll be back after I transfer this video. Okay, so I am back, and can't believe I didn't mention this. The model number on this guy is the UP2020, so if you guys are interested. I saw a few of these going for pretty cheap recently, but this specific model pops up kind of randomly. The Optima series is much more popular, obviously, and those pop up, but those cost more, but they're the exact same internals, so I don't understand that. Anyway, so we should be able to slide this out now. yeah, I didn't really spend too much time explaining what's going on this side of the board. So there's a unpopulated ribbon connector, maybe for some debugging purposes, switching power supply here, and on this side is the micro USB input, so it's probably for power supply and the lithium-ion battery charging chips. That's my guess. So we should be able to open this up now. So to do that, actually there's another unpopulated, oh sorry, this ribbon connector goes to the actual top control button panel. This one is unpopulated. It just sits there and does nothing apparently, probably for debug purposes. Anywho, to get this open, you'll notice that these plugs actually slide into the plastic. The easiest way is these are almost flush mounted, so you should be able to kind of slightly grab one of the corners and slightly pull out the plastic bezel on the side with the HDMI input, and you can very carefully lift the ribbon connectors out and start wiggling it slightly to get this to pop out. And there we go, it's released. Make sure that the speaker comes along for the ride. Don't rip off the wires. And there you go. Single 1-watt speaker, like cell phone quality, I would say. Probably worse, actually, than my cell phone. Anywho, yeah, the composite input, I forgot to mention, is a 2.5 millimeter 4-pole jack. So if you want to use composite video input, you would need to buy a cord for that if you don't have one already. Other than that, you have the micro SD card slot, USB charge input. Here's the IR sensor there, a little cute guy. There we go. And here, we have another large chip. I'm not familiar with this brand. It's hard to tell. I would have assumed that this would be the main controller chip, but who knows, maybe there's one that controls handling the AV inputs, because this seems to be close to this connector, and then maybe there's one for the media playing capability with the embedded memory. That's probably likely what's happening, actually. I found the repair manual for this released by Optima. Things are slightly, I mean, the layout's identical, but in terms of like their debug methodology and whatnot, it refers to like certain menus that aren't available on this unit because this unit's flashed with a different firmware. I'm not sure if I tried to reflash this with Optima's firmware, if it would survive or not, and I don't want to risk that. Anywho, you'll notice a little chip right here. I can't read that. I would guess some kind of serial EEPROM. Yeah, interestingly enough, 3 little chips here that all look identical, right underneath the connector for the RGB LED, so those are probably the constant current drivers, as well as a couple more chips here, maybe some power supply related stuff, because there's some inductors around that area. But yeah, pretty simple. Not sure how many layers this board has. Probably 4 layer. Probably don't need to go much more than that. But anyway, yeah, pretty small actually in terms of the overall size. Not as small as the AXA projector that I did, the P1 Junior that I did quite a while ago. But this projector blows that away. I'm sorry, I like that projector. I got rid of it since I made that video. But this outdoes it in terms of resolution, battery life, everything pretty much. Anyway, let's get to the interesting bit, the actual module, the optical module itself. So, gonna pull this out. In order to do so, there's 3 screws, I believe, that you need to remove first. And then we're gonna have to do some prying. Let's just get that in shot. So these are pretty long screws. They go through to the bottom of the case, and there's more, there's a copper pad, like a shim at the bottom for more heat dissipation. And this is stuck down with a thermal pad, so it's going to be, you're going to have to pry a little bit and carefully pry, because we do not want to destroy this, obviously. So these screws, yeah, are pretty long. They go right through. Yeah, it's mostly metallized. There's like a metallized film on the inside, I'm guessing, for EMI suppression. Anywho, we should be able to get in here now. So what I'm going to do is find this guy on my pocket knife. This is like the screwdriver portion. It's flat, it's fairly thin but strong, but it's not sharp. It's not going to cut anything. So we should be able to get on the side opposite of the adjustment and start prying, and it should come out like this. It took me a little more effort the first time I did this, but yeah, we should be able to lift that right out. And you can see that well, you could see if my hand weren't in the way. You could see that the optical adjustment here, crap, I got fingerprints on this already. Just rub those away. Yeah. So the optical adjustment is this little tiny metal protrusion here that just goes back and forth, and that's literally all it adjusts, is that like centimeter of movement there. And you might be able to see the lens. Yeah, you can see the lens just barely going in and out there, and that's how you adjust it. So anywho, when you're putting this back together, it has to go back and match this white piece in here. Why is this like not auto adjusting? There we go. Anywho, so yeah, this is the optical assembly. Lots of copper on it. It's pretty much like solid metal. It's pretty heavy. I'm not going to open this up because it would destroy, you know, the actual optical portion of this. I will show you though that this cable routes underneath here, goes down here, and the RGB LED is located underneath here. There are two screws holding the top pad together, top metal heatsink shim to the actual optical module. You'll have to remove this tape, and you'll be able to get the RGB LED off here. There's another little ribbon ZIF connector there with some glue on it that you'll have to break in order to pull the RGB LED out if you wanted to remove this and maybe add a more powerful optical module. But you have to deal with the heat, basically. That's a problem because of how small this is. Heat in a very small area is a very difficult thing to deal with. There's another little heat absorbing shim there that mates with this little metal bar there, and that's basically the heat dump. So with a DLP chip, it either can reflect the light towards the lens, or it has to reflect it away from the lens to create a black pixel. And when it does so, the heat has to be dumped somewhere. It's light, but it's energy that has to be dissipated. So what happens is it usually dumps it into like a piece of metal or something like that, and that metal obviously will get hot. And there's also some heat sinking that needs to be applied because the DMD chip, the digital micromirror device chip, isn't 100% efficient at reflecting light, so you have to be careful on that too. Usually that's thermally bonded, and that is actually, if I remove this screw here, it's actually this thin sheet here. There's a I can just barely see. There's another one of these types of flat flex connectors, and the actual DMD is this black piece right in here, and it's tiny. I mean, it's like half the size of a postage stamp, and this is the array of 854 by 480 essentially tiny mirrors. So let's just fit this back in. Another interesting thing is the adjustment method for the lens is basically this half semicircular piece, and I wish this would focus, please. Thank you. Half semicircular piece that you actually rotate on the outside, and a set of two full gears sort of, and then this quarter gear with the actual fingers that come up that move the metal pin on the actual lens assembly itself. And as you rotate this, it just rotates it left and right pretty much. The focusing mechanism on this is pretty coarse, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of a pain to get dialed in, but once you do, and as long as you don't keep moving the device, it's perfectly fine. One thing I do like about this module is the lens is covered by a thin piece of glass, so it's a little bit more resilient than some of the other projectors I found. Yeah, like I said, you need to make sure that the pin fits inside of the little white plastic fingers that come up from that gear. Otherwise, when you squish it down, you might break something. Make sure it moves freely before screwing it back together. Yeah, so we're gonna put this back together, and then I will give you guys a run, because it would be kind of you know, a little bit of a letdown if I show you this all working and don't show you the actual projected quality. As long as I don't lose any screws. Come on. Hard doing this behind a camera. So to reassemble, it's pretty much, I mean, like most things, exact opposite of assembly. You want to make sure that you clean off the surfaces if you got any fingerprints on them, because this does have to couple the heat to the case, because it relies on that for heat sinking. So to put the board back in, we want to lift these guys up, and you want to angle it. I would put the speaker in first and then angle it from the jack side, making sure all the plugs fit in the respective holes. So here, I will put the speaker back in, fit the jacks in, and then lift this plastic out just enough to clear the two HDMI and the universal I/O plug adapters. Then we can push in a socket here, followed by lifting the ZIF connector tab and reinserting the RGB LED connector. In this case, I wish I had my tweezers. I have no... Oh wait, give me a sec. Okay, got my tweezers back. So yeah, tweezers help immensely with ZIF connectors, so we'll push that down, lock that in, and we have two screws from the speaker. Have to put the speaker housing back on, of course. Yeah, they, interestingly enough, have like a little chamber of plastic to, I guess, try to create like an audio cavity or something like that. For this small of a speaker, I don't know if that really matters for how tinny it is. So as I said before, you're best off just using the headphone jack, the output. So yeah, put this back in, make sure this still spins, and it does. So now we have one screw that goes into the body right here. Yeah, and that's the only screw that holds the main board in, interestingly enough. Do not forget the IR window here. How did this go in? If I remember right, this was a pain to get in. I wonder if I did this in the wrong order. I might have had to put this in before I shut it, or... Oh no. Okay, yeah, I had it upside down. There are like little ears that hang out. They go towards the bottom, and it just slots right in there. Like that. So now, this is by far the hardest, fiddly-most bit to do. You have to lift up the latch on the ZIF connector, and it keeps wanting to fall back down, which is really freaking irritating. And then with one hand holding kind of both units to kind of get this guy to fit back in. ZIF connector. I might have to do this off screen because I literally have to use like 3 hands and I only have 2. Wait, almost. Son of a... Ah, got it. Okay, make sure that goes in all the way. Activate the latch. And the way they work is there's a little black stripe on the connector itself, like a line that shows you that you have to push it in this far, and then you can lock down the tab. Anyway, that's all in there. I can close the case. There's some clips around the edge. Make sure those are in. And then all you need to do, really, those 6 screws back in. I forgot to mention there are supposed to be 2 rubber feet on the front here, of which I've removed one of them, and one of them was missing when I got this. So yeah, I use this on a tripod anyway, so that's not a big deal for me at all, whether I have those rubber feet or not. Yeah, these screws are pretty long. Don't over tighten screws. That's pretty much the one no-no of electronics, because these aren't metal insert threads for the actual screw holes, so you will strip out the plastic if you over tighten. But you don't want to do them too loose too, because remember, the top plate is a heatsink, so if it's not properly thermally coupled to the chips and to the board, it's not going to do its job. So 2 more screws, and then I'll get the battery in. Here's one. Yeah, I'm almost tempted to. I've searched online. I cannot find the pinout for this multi-connector, but if I ever do, I'm very tempted to just solder wires onto it and then solder. The only thing I would probably use maybe VGA and component video, because those are the only 2 things that aren't available via the HDMI or the AV in. So I would be tempted to add an external jack for those 2. Battery can go in, contacts facing down, and then it's just a matter of sliding this guy on. And we're good to go. SD card can go back in, and I will do a quick little demo right now of it turning on. He says as he knocks over his battery bank. Yeah, so just plug in the battery bank, shut this guy off, turn it on, focus it, and there we go. So you can see works. Colors look washed out, but that's because I have open blinds there that are kind of ruining the image. But anywho, yeah, everything works. The only real pain that I have with this is the focusing distance isn't great for a projector. For instance, if you try to push this up to like past, I would say, a 40, 50, 60-inch image, it has trouble keeping the entire image in focus. And there's no keystone correction or anything like that, so you have to be flat, exactly perpendicular to the projection surface, otherwise you get a distorted or trapezoidal image. But given the price, the size, I cannot complain at all. So anyway, that was my teardown. Sorry I rambled for like half an hour. Yeah, I love Pico projectors. They're just not the cheapest things, unfortunately. But anyway, that was my teardown of the iGo UP2020. And so yeah, hopefully I can bring you some more teardowns. I'm trying to keep things going regularly. As I said, this is my 99th video. Next one will be the 100th, so I gotta think of something cool to do for that. Anyway, update for my my mini NES project. I found a 3D file for a full-size case replacement for an NES cartridge, so I did the only logical thing, and I printed out a scaled version. I think this is like 30, what was it, maybe 35% scaled. This is the card itself. Printed it out in black and then using natural colored PLA filament. And yeah, so I found out the hard way that I need to use a heated bed for large surface area prints like this. Otherwise, they do warp considerably. You can see this is kind of like tilted up at all the corners and it doesn't fit together right. This one is with the heated bed, fits together just right, but I found a problem with my printer, which explains why some of my other parts were geometrically slightly off. It's not, the bed isn't exactly 90 degrees between the X and the Y axes, which means when I try to print out a square, it prints out a slight trapezoid, which means that if I try to fit up all the corners, they don't fit exactly. There's kind of a little bit of a overlap on the bottom one, and likewise in this corner too. Which means I need to readjust the bed, unfortunately. It's not that big of a deal for something, that's this small, but for larger prints it would definitely be something quite annoyingly considerable. Anyway, yeah, so this is my teardown. If you guys like the video, like, comment, subscribe. I've started a Patreon, so if anyone would like to make donations for future teardown videos, or even suggestions of what you'd like to see if it's something I can get my hands on reasonably enough. Keep in mind that I am, the the epitome of a starving college student trying to make my way through, so everything that I buy is out of my own pocket, and hopefully I get good deals on stuff. But anyway, yeah, so I've put up the requisite links down below. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, do your thing. You guys are great. I rarely get trolls on my channel, probably because it's such a small channel, but most of the people that I get commenting, my regular viewers, you guys are awesome. It's the entire reason why I keep these videos coming. That, and plus for my sanity, and plus I love taking things apart. I mean, you don't own something until you've opened it and, tinkered around in there. So anyway, I will see you guys in the next videos. Bye.